welcome. We're here with Casey Stangel, our Associate AD of Administrator, Senior Women Administrator of Nevada Athletics.
Yes. Hello.
Well, welcome to the first podcast that I've ever been doing it.
A milestone. Thanks for having me.
So prior to getting here in Reno, you served in, you went to Vanderbilt and you went to Washington. And, tell me, how is that process? You've been in a big Vanderbilt school and then now you're here in Nevada. How is that process going?
It's been fantastic. I have really enjoyed learning kind of just some of the differences. I think no matter what size school you're at, you're going to have issues, right? Or wants or needs. And those are different here than they were there. And so I think it's helped me, especially just be a little bit more creative in some of the solutions, because sometimes we just don't have the resources that have had at past institutions. And so I think that's good. I think that makes us better, makes us more creative, and find ways to kind of make us unique at Nevada. So it's been a fantastic transition.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So you received your bachelor's degree in communications in Washington.
Yes.
So, but you also were a softball player.
Yes.
So what made you get into working in athletics and going through that whole process of being a student athlete and then what you're going to do next,
Yeah. So I played for an incredible female head coach at Washington, and Coach Tar was really diligent about just preparing us for what came next. It was something that was talked about. It was something that we prepared for as student athletes. Even just honing in on our skills of organization and planning. I could just go into detail about all the ways that we were taught those things as student athletes. And so I was really forward thinking always, I think, in my life, but especially being in that environment, always thinking what's going to come after my playing career. And I really wanted to work in professional baseball. That was in college my ultimate goal. I've always had a passion for the sport of baseball and softball, but unfortunately there's just more room to grow professionally in the game of baseball than there is in softball right now. Mm-hmm. And so working in Major League Baseball was my goal. Right after college, I went to work for Major League Baseball in the Commissioners office in New York City, which was an incredible experience. And I learned a ton about that industry at that level. There's so many levels of working in professional baseball, but the commissioner's office level was just so high level, so business oriented, and it has to be, right? That's what, you're thinking about the league. You're thinking about so many things that are kind of further away from maybe player development, player experience, where those are more honed in with the organizations. So that was my first job right out of college, and it was kind of an opportunity to do or experience what I thought I wanted to do. It obviously hasn't ended up or hasn't been where my career ended up. But yeah, that was kind of my experience right out of college, being a student athlete, being at a high level, and then kind of having that plan to do that right out of school.
Yeah, so you mentioned being in New York and all of those things, and I'm just curious about how much difficult it was to get to that point where when you come out of playing a sport and you're mentally even though you're thinking forward okay, I'm not gonna play this forever, how much difficult it was to do that transition of being a student athlete, going to school, going to classes, and then having job at the major leagues and all of those things.
It's funny, just to backtrack it a little bit. So the interview process for this role, which was kind of a seasonal role in that office, it was so extensive.
Yeah.
So I was basically interviewing for it through my senior year. Washington was on a quarter system, so it's not semesters. Mm-hmm. So I finished my academic portion of my senior year, I think in January, so before the season even started. So through the season, I wasn't in school. So I was very much routine driven. What am I going to do? How am I going to prepare for what's next? So I'm interviewing for this position. And I remember Sis Bates, who's one of the best players in softball. Sis is a freshman my senior year. And I remember like being on a road trip somewhere, and I had this interview opportunity it was like the next step of the process. And they interviewed me, and they were like, it's a virtual interview. You have to do it in the next 24 hours. And we're like on the road. I think we were in Oregon. And her and I are like freaking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got the interview. And I'm like, I don't have anything business professional to wear because we're on a road trip. So I wear like my BP top, and I'm like sitting in our hotel room, and it's like asking these questions, and we're laughing, but I'm like trying to hold it together. It's just like such a big deal. So I'll never forget that. It was just really funny because it was like being in the present moment of being a student athlete, but also like working on what was next. So fast forward, I end up getting this opportunity. Our team makes it to the World Series, finally got our team back for the first time since 2013. So I think it's been 4 years since we had made it back to Oklahoma City, which was so incredible. We lose. We play in the game to go to the championship series, and we lose, which was devastating.
Yeah.
Career over, season over, fly back. And the next day, I packed up my locker, like, hugged all my teammates, and left for New York. And, like, everyone else was still in school because with the quarter system, you were done end of June with the school year, and it was, like, mid-June. And so I left, and I left really quickly.
Yeah.
And it was such an interesting transition. Moving to New York, had never been to New York.
Yeah.
Lived with a stranger who I met the day she moved into our like little apartment. And then had to like dive into being a professional.
Yeah.
And that was insane. I was totally prepared for it though.
Yeah.
As much as I could have been, right? Like I wasn't totally prepared and just crushed it, but I can't imagine what I could have done or what Washington or what Coach Tar or, my family or whatever, what anyone could have done to prepare me for it more.
Yeah.
But it was still hard.
Yeah.
It was like I'm seeing my teammates, like, some of them that are returning, like posting videos of like training over the summer, and that's hard to not be a part of. Or like some of them that decided to go play in the pro league. Like that was a decision I made that they didn't want to go play in the pro league. I wanted to start my professional, like business professional career. And so that was kind of hard too, because I was like, should I have kept playing? Should I be doing this right now? No friends, New York City.
Yeah.
Trying to also like, do I like keep working out? Do I keep lifting? Like, what do I wear? I mean, it's just so many things, but it was a hard transition. But I think I just tried to apply like all the lessons I learned as a student athlete to being a professional, like having a routine, being on time, being prepared, and like you try and take what you learn as a student athlete to being a professional as much as you can. And so I just kind of went for it.
Yeah. I think people just don't realize how much like it goes in our minds. Like me as a former swimmer, like a D1 swimmer too, it's like they don't realize how much effort and how much we go into it. And like they just think that, they go on the field and they play for the championship and that's it. But they don't see the day-to-day like lives and like working in athletics. Like
totally,
like we've been there and like we see what those girls and guys go through, and like we feel for them. Like if after a loss, like we are also so upset and like it's like, you didn't do anything. Well, but we've been there every single day with them and seeing what they go through, and we understand what goes in their minds and all of those things. And like I don't think people realize how much it goes into that. And I think it's very important for us to bring that awareness that it's easy to go on Twitter and backlash someone for not playing a good game, but they don't.
They have no idea.
They have no idea.
No clue.
It's like for me, like working with communications, like my job requires me to go on Twitter and update people, but like I have like after a game, after a loss, like I avoid going on Twitter because it can get so much. You can't see it.
No, I hate sitting in the stands with fans. Like that's my biggest thing I can't handle as like a former student athlete working in athletics is like I can't sit in the stands
No.
for any sport, because when I hear those people yelling at even the opposing student athletes, I'm
Yeah.
like, you have no idea.
No.
And like, yeah, maybe they made an error and they need to get better, or, you know,
Yeah.
whatever, right? Like, there's the realness of the fact that, like, you know, they're elite athletes and you want to hold them to that standard and like all those things. And they hold themselves to that standard.
Yeah.
But like when people yell, I'm just like, do you even know how hard it is to do what they're doing right now? Like, you have no idea.
No, they have like no idea. They think it's just easy. Like, oh yeah, like
Yeah.
hey, we're gonna play
Right.
basketball right now,
Ugh.
and